evening to you all and welcome once again to Talk Time. This is your show that comes your way every Monday from 9 p.m. to around 10 p.m. here, only on UBC TV. And tonight we're looking at one very, very important sector of our society or section of our society, and that is people with disabilities. And we are measuring or taking special attention to access to Medicare for people with disabilities, but we are actually focusing on sexual and reproductive health. A lot has been talked about, people with disabilities, how it is very difficult sometimes for them to access, health services due to so many reasons. Today, when we construct our hospitals, some of them, you find that there's no provision for this special, kind of people for them to access, the hospital. And this has rubbed them the wrong way. And of course, complaints have been there in the papers, and you've even watched on TV. These things keep coming up. But what is government doing? What is the private sector doing to address this problem here? And tonight in the studio, I'm joined by Honorable Safia who is a member of Parliament representing people with disabilities, and we are going to be discussing this and so many other areas that are concern people with disabilities. Honorable Safia, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
And yes, first of all, let us first look at you. I mean, some people don't know you. The viewer maybe is watching for the first time and they don't know. Who is Honorable Safia Nalule-Juko?
Okay, my name is Safia Nalule-Juko. I'm the National Woman Member of Parliament representing persons with disabilities. And also I work with an organization called Human Rights of Women and Girls with Disabilities, which is majorly funded by Amplify Change. We actually, one of the issues is to work on human rights generally, but to emphasize issues of sexual and reproductive health. Because you see, Uganda has actually endeavored to try to look at the fertility rates, issues to do with adolescent health, issues to do with sexual and reproductive health, and actually the Ministry of Health has come up with a policy on adolescent health, and it has also come up with a specific policy on sexual and reproductive health.
Okay.
But the participation and inclusion of the concerns of persons with disabilities, and especially those of women and girls with disabilities, is very, very low.
Thank you so much. That is Honorable Safia Nalule talking about herself and also what she does. And looking at sexual and reproductive health, for people with or for persons with disabilities, a lot has been talked about. These people, being neglected, in hospitals. You find they are not given the due attention. What is the situation today in the country?
Okay, like I've said, together with other organizations of disabled people, Human Rights of Women and Girls with Disabilities, with the support of Amplify Change, we have undertaken research, baseline surveys. We have actually worked with the Ministry of Health and other service providers, and we have developed a checklist on the concerns of persons with disabilities. So we have shared with all the actors, and even with Parliament, especially the Committee of Health, the Committee of Budget, and even with the Ministry of Finance itself. Like you are asking me, how far have we gone with these issues? Sincerely, even when I was still in my reproductive age, we're talking about issues of accessible labor beds, issues of accessible examination tables in the antenatal wards, issues of accessible toilets, issues, to do with accessibility of the general hospital environment, and even the attitudes of the health service providers. This one, we have talked about it for a very long time. But now we are moving. Some people have actually listened and they are also like acting. But where we are going now, and this organization, Human Rights of Women and Girls with Disabilities, now we are putting emphasis on issues to do with legislative advocacy. You know, like working with districts. We are working in the districts of Marara, Masaka, Ruero, Wachiso, and we are soon coming to Kampala to work with the district officials so that they can enact ordinances on sexual and reproductive health rights and needs of women and girls with disabilities. By so doing, we are doing awareness raising, but we are also emphasizing, we hope that they will be emphasizing the need to include these concerns in the budgets of the districts. Because, as you know, Parliament passes budgets, but the implementing agencies are majorly the districts. If you don't go down actually to check on how these districts do their budgets, include issues of disabled people, then you'll be missing a point. Then the other issue we're talking about is actually budget advocacy. With budget advocacy, you know, so many Ugandans have not paid attention to this. But Uganda has got the best laws on inclusive and participatory budgeting process. Because we have the Budget Act, we have the Public Finance Management Act, which actually spells out even a calendar of activities of how we do our budgeting process. Starting is a bottom up, by the way. You listen to people complaining at a stage when Parliament is passing the budget. But according to our laws, the budget is bottom up. It starts with budget conferences at the village, parish, sub-county, district, and then it comes to the sectors. But you ask yourself, you ask the Ugandans, that do they know these processes? Do they participate in these processes? And actually on my side, when I saw that I'm representing a marginalized group, which is majorly forgotten in this process, I innovated the need for a certificate of gender and equity compliance. Parliament cannot pass the National Budget Framework paper without the certificate of gender and equity compliance. It's a greater innovation. It's only here in Uganda, but Ugandans have not used it. So in this case, in this program, we are using this certificate to advocate for budgets which are responsive to the sexual and reproductive health rights and needs of women and girls with disabilities at national level and also at district level.
Oh, thank you so much, Honorable Safia. And it's good you have actually talked about, budgeting, but also you have talked about, these laws and, policies that we have in place here in the country. Indeed, and you're right, by the way, to say that this country has some of the best policies, but also the biggest problem that we have is implementation. And I'll be coming back to that one. But let's first look at, the budget, the health sector in the financial year that's coming up. How has the PWDs been catered for? Because first of all, the health budget is not that big, and we have this marginalized group of people who need special attention. How is your budget? How has it been allocated to you? Is it sufficient enough?
Okay, maybe before I answer that question, I just want to put to your attention that in addition to the sexual and reproductive health rights and needs of women and girls with disabilities, which we are advocating for to get into the national budget and in the district budget. There are also other issues, health issues, to do with disability. Like, for example, when you look at our crutches, which we call mobility appliances, the hearing aids, the white canes, then to do with, accessibility, mobility, then access to information, and so on. That one is still lacking. And I'd like, now you have asked me, let me talk about this. Minister of Health, I'm actually appealing to them, because they normally combine the budgets to do with disability together with other budgets. And actually my call in Parliament is that, can you kindly separate these budgets, so that you look at the magnitude of the problems we have. That's when you very well know that the budgets we're talking about are so small. Look at at the need of the crutches, the wheelchairs, these mobility appliances, and then the hearing aids and whatever, they are not there. And we are actually living on the mercy of those people who actually can import these crutches. And maybe the charity organizations like Rotary clubs and so on. And yet the government must provide these appliances. So, you know, like when you look at the budget of Ministry of Health and you try to look out at the needs of persons with disabilities, you know, they're like a neglected area. But maybe good enough. Recently, we have passed a World Bank loan. And this World Bank loan is to support the health sector and the education sector. And for us, actually,
for people.
No. The general health sector and the education sector. So, actually, maybe what has interested us with this advocacy of human rights of women and girls with disabilities, for the first time, when you know the Minister of Health has developed a checklist of what should be in the hospitals. For the first time, they have put the accessible labor beds for mothers with disabilities as one of the requirements in these hospitals. At least maybe we can clap for that.
That's
but it has taken
in the right direction.
I'm telling you, and I'd like to thank our funders, the Amplify Change, because we have really put in a lot of energy. But I would also like to thank some of these officers who work in the Ministry of Health. There's Dr. I've forgotten the name, but he is one of the doctors who have been very responsive. Dr. Nachiganda, and then other key players in the health sector. So they have done, they have supported our work to amplify what we have been talking about, and then finally, at least we have got this. But it is still, a hard task.
And of course, it's not something that can be done within a short time.
And yet, with this requirement of the Certificate of Gender and Equity Compliance, which requires sectors to develop their budgets when they have considered issues of women, issues of persons with disabilities, young people, old people, it wouldn't have been very difficult. Because, you develop your budget, your sector budget with that sensitivity. Some people argue that, the budget is small. But what this law, the Public Finance Management Act, requires you to do is not to say to have an extra budget, but is to look at what you have and you distribute it equitably. This is what is lacking. But still now you see this is not done, and yet it's like they are breaking the law.
Okay, thank you so much. And viewer, if you're just joining us, this is Talk Time here on UBC TV. We are coming live to you from Broadcast House here on Nile Avenue. And tonight on Talk Time, we are, of course, looking at access to Medicare for people or persons with disabilities. And we are focusing on sexual and reproductive health. And in the studio, I'm with Honorable Safia Juko, who is a member of Parliament representing persons with disabilities. Now, let's look at one of the the group that is really prone to some of the bad things, I would say, that would happen to them in as far as sexual and reproductive health is concerned. And this is the primary going girls who are impaired physically. How are you dealing with that? Because you might find they are prone and people can easily take advantage of them. Do they know their rights? Do they know their sexual reproductive rights?
Okay. Now, in this project which we are running, and the next one, we are actually looking. We are looking at working with. Again, these programs are funded by Amplify Change. We are looking at working with the councillors, the councillors representing persons with disabilities at district level.
District level,
Because we know that when you work with the councillors, then you'll be able to reach out to so many others, maybe at the lower levels. And we would like also to work with these councillors and other leaders of disabled women to be as role models as well as champions to advancing the sexual and reproductive health rights and needs of women and girls with disabilities. And you have said it very well, to reach out to those girls who are actually vulnerable to issues, for example, of sexual and gender-based violence, you know, issues of neglect. We also want to work with the parents. We want to work with the leaders at the lower level, and we also want to work with like the religious sector, because you know we still, you know, at this era where disability issues are reflected, are actually provided for in the national constitution and also in the national legislations, you can be actually, you can wonder how you can wonder why you should actually still find girls with disabilities being discriminated. We have one case, recent case, just here in Impigi district. There is a young girl who had mental disability, but now her mother decided to take her to the grandparents. The grandparents could not sleep with this girl in the same house, so they had a room next to their kitchen. So she was staying there.
She was put.
So one man was always coming and actually raping her. But one day, that man came, maybe having taken marijuana, and then after raping her, he killed that girl. Yeah. There are so many cases in Wachiso. Maybe one time when I come back to studio, we will show you the pictures where actually, which will be showing you the neglect of these girls by parents, caretakers, and even the would-be spouses.
Thank you. Actually, you've already hinted on what was coming too, and that is discrimination, you know, of people with persons with disabilities. It is still happening, actually, as you even said, but probably I would like you to highlight that, because there is discrimination at, you know, workplace, you know, even in their own homes, as you clearly put it, and also, you know, in hospitals, especially because we are looking at the health sector and you know, sexual and reproductive health. These people are discriminated against even in hospitals. How are you dealing with that? That is one. And what does the legislation say about all this?
Of course, the legislation is so positive, because we have a whole chapter 4 of the Constitution. It talks about human rights. And one of the things it actually talks about is discrimination, stopping discrimination. You stop discrimination, you shouldn't discriminate anybody because of his sex or her sex, because of history, because of the disability, because of age. You know, you shouldn't. And when it comes to disabled people and women, actually Articles 32, those articles in the 30s, they talk about that. When it is education, there is an article on that. And even, you know, issues of person with disabilities are so advanced that we have just passed, you know, an amendment to the disability bill. We had the Disability Act in 2006, but it has been amended. Even at international level, we have got the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The sub-region, East Africa, has passed a bill on persons with disabilities. At African level, we have got the African Protocol on Human and People's Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities. But even with all that, discrimination is still happening. And I tell you, actually what we have to fight against now is fighting discrimination at all stages. Because like you said, it starts in the home. You are not given opportunity to make decisions even on your life. I'm telling you, as we discuss this issue of sexual and reproductive health, I was in a conference, the first global conference on disability in London last year. And then afterwards I happened to be invited to the World Water Week in Sweden. But then when we were looking at water, sanitation and hygiene, you know, we had cases, I think were from Nepal, you know, a young girl, you know, she has a mental disability, but then she couldn't manage her puberty stage.
Yes.
You know, menstruation came, and then she didn't know how to manage it. And you know, she was just seeing blood coming out, you know, but she needed the attention of somebody who was actually very concerned, like the mother. But you know, these are the issues. So at home, when you're discriminated against, it's really, really very bad. You are not only denied services like education or health, but even managing your life is very difficult. Because like if a girl is growing and she has like a mental disability, and you don't support her to manage her adulthood stage, then if she's raped or defiled, you know, she's liable to get these unplanned pregnancies.
Yes.
So, and then what we are seeing with human rights of women and girls with disabilities, the research we did, because of neglect, denial of education, somebody cannot even know what is happening to his body or her body. And then after being denied education, somebody doesn't have a skill, for example, to seek for employment. Somebody doesn't have capital to start self-employment. So it ends up by these women and girls with disabilities being unable to afford health services. You know, in Uganda, most Ugandans actually go out to seek health services in the private sector.
Yes.
And then you have to pay dearly. So when this, you know, the way discrimination actually runs all through, and then somebody doesn't have a job, somebody doesn't have an education, so she cannot even afford health services.
And that becomes a problem.
It is a problem, and yet what we are struggling to tell government is that Article 4 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities actually demands from government to give services to persons. It states that it is the obligation of the states, the member states, to give care to persons with disabilities.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Safia. And yes, we are still with this topic here, access to Medicare for persons with disabilities. I'm with Honorable Safia Nalule Juko, a Member of Parliament representing people or persons with disabilities. And we are especially looking at sexual and reproductive health. Yes, we talked about school-going children, you know, in as far as their sexual and reproductive health is concerned. And this, when we look at the adolescent age, that age, they are really problematic there. But of course, these are the bodies also. There is a way, you know, naturally there is a way they can, they treat these people, and at times you find that even their own their fellow students, you know, they can take advantage of them, especially if it is in boarding schools. There have been reports of, you know, fellow students, raping, you know, these girls, these young girls who cannot, you know, fight for themselves. They cannot defend themselves, and it has become a problem. Do you have like a partnership with schools to ensure that probably there are laws in regard to that area there?
Yes, I was sharing with you and the general public that with this program, the new program,
and also prisons, by the way.
Exactly. Human rights of women and girls with disabilities has been supported to implement by Amplify Change. We are also going to go to schools. But good enough, because we have been working very closely with the Ministry of Health. You know, the Ministry of Health has come up with a policy on adolescent health. You know, it's called the National Health Policy for Adolescents. It also has come up with the National Policy on Sexual and Reproductive Health. These policies are actually going to give guidelines. They are going to give guidelines to all actors in this area, even including schools. So what we are fighting for, because we are not all that big to cover the whole country, is to work within the framework of government to, for example, we are advocating, we are working with the ministry to ensure that under these two policies, the National Health Policy on Adolescents and the National Health Policy on Sexual and Reproductive Health, issues of persons with disabilities are included. So far, I think it is Section 11 in the National Policy on Sexual and Reproductive Health. The ministry talked about persons with disabilities, that they are so vulnerable and they are excluded, so attention is needed. So maybe we are going to build on that.
Okay. Do you have like a program that you have in place? Probably, I want to look at the prisons in the country. People are there. They are persons with disabilities are there in prison. And, you know, a prison setup is really, I would say it is quite different. It's unique. Yeah, compared to, let us say, you know, a school, for example. You know,
I've been the vice chairperson of the Human Rights Committee, and we have visited prisons, and I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. How are you helping, not necessarily, you know, your association, but how are these people being helped in order to, you know, like their rights to be, you know, respected, observed in prison? And if, for example, something happens to them in prison, while in prison, like maybe they are raped, something can happen. So how are you dealing with that?
Okay, I'm very sorry maybe to the viewers, because I had come with some leaflets to share with you the program Human Rights of Women and Girls with Disabilities, the program we are running, but because of the inaccessibility, maybe I have to use this opportunity.
We'll have to talk about that, Honorable, later on.
Okay, but now with prisons, we have not yet reached there.
Okay.
But I you know, from my experience as you know, I'm soon getting my master's in human rights.
Wow.
And I've been the vice chairperson of the Human Rights Committee. We have been visiting prisons, and we have been looking at that. But I think we have been, you know, doing this advocacy together with the Uganda Human Rights Commission. But I think there is some improvement in some prisons. Because you remember, in some prisons, you know, women are to, especially maybe at police detention centers.
The detention centers, you know, where they are mixed.
They are mixed up. But you know, we have fought that. We have also been fighting children being incarcerated with their mothers. We are also fighting that. You know, we have fought so many, we know, wars, like, you know, human rights abuses. You know, like people using buckets, the bucket system.
Yes.
That one we have fought. You know, people not having, you know, not abiding with the UN principles on prisoners' rights.
Yes.
You know, like not having enough beddings, the clothing, whatever. We have fought that. You know, the war is not yet over, but at least there's some improvement. Yeah, maybe we need to go with you, and we see the progress.
Definitely, we shall. And also, the other thing is, you know, advocacy. You know, when we talk about, you know, rights of persons with disabilities, it's not something that can be left to just maybe the parliamentarians or government, but it starts with us in our homes. So how is the advocacy, you know, program going on?
I think I would like to thank you so much for this question, because I was even thinking about it. You know, a person like me, I was wondering, how have I made it, maybe even to come to this studio? I was looking at my colleagues' person disabilities, and I was looking at my life as a person. You know, when there is an opportunity, you have to seize it. Because, like, for me, I was given an opportunity to go to school. But then you don't have to wait for any other person, you know, to do anything for you. You know, like this ex-president of America said, our neighbor from Kenya, Obama.
Yes.
He said that if you want change, you shouldn't wait for any other person or any other time.
It starts with you.
You are the one whom you have been waiting for, and the time is now. So I have this opportunity to call upon all persons with disabilities. They should never sit back. Let them use any opportunity they see, like any other person, so that you know you better your life. For me, even if I listen to a radio, I say now, how can I use this information I've got from the radio or television to better my life? That's how I do it. So basically, for the entire community, to answer your question, let disabled people actually be outgoing. Let the people who live with person disabilities be very supportive. So that if somebody starts a small kiosk, don't, you know, consume each and everything. Don't become a dependent on the person with disability. Just support that person, you know, to prosper.
Thank you so much, and that is very, very encouraging. It's not like we should leave this work, to advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities to government, or the member of parliament or members of parliament who are in charge of, who represent persons with disabilities, but also as the community where these people live. We should also take a keen interest in them and support their cause.
Can I also say something?
Yes.
And let also government live to their words. I mean the sectors of government. Like for example, like when you look at NDP, the National Development Plan, it talks about, the theme is like, the vision is like strengthening Uganda's competitiveness in sustainable wealth creation, employment and inclusive growth. Sincerely, if the government is dedicated to see inclusive growth, it means leaving no one behind. Let them also put in energy to see that disabled people are supported. But let me share with you what actually has disappointed us. When I first joined Parliament, we advocated for a disability grant. Government granted us that grant, amounting to 3 billion shillings. But as much as it was small, it was covering the entire country. But now, as we have been, advancing, seeing so many problems and disabled people coming out, because I told the president that we are now 6 million plus. Said, what? I said, because of the good policies of your government, disabled people are being taken out of hiding and then they are brought on the surface. So even the census is now counting them. But now when you look at 3 billion shillings and you divide it among 6 million disabled people, every person gets 500 shillings. I was telling the president, this is not enough. So can you increase it maybe to 12 billion so that maybe at least, each sub-region in Uganda can get like 3 billion, 3 billion per sub-region. But then, to our disappointment, the Minister of Gender is bringing a decrease from 3 billion to 2 point something, sincerely speaking.
It will not help at the end of the day.
Still, you are living to the theme of the National Development Plan, are you really realistic? What I'm trying to say is that when government is planning and budgeting, they must be realistic to the needs of persons with disabilities.
It's very, very important.
Yeah, that's why in our organization, we are looking mainly at legislative advocacy and budgeting.
Okay, because the other thing that probably the viewer should actually take note of is that gone are the days when we used to think that persons with disabilities are actually disabled, as in the word disabled, they cannot do anything. Today you find that we've got a member of parliament who is representing persons with disabilities, and she does more than that. There are so many others, and actually it brings me to a story I was reading recently in the papers, that there's this young lady who actually before she was born a normal person, but one time thugs entered their house and she was raped. Fortunately, she never contracted HIV/AIDS and she did not get pregnant. However, after some time, she was involved in an accident and she had to be, one of her legs had to be amputated. But that did not stop her from pursuing what she wanted to do in her life. She could not just sit there and start begging. And today she's actually doing some advocacy work for people, for persons with disabilities. But what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that she has really not gone out there and looked for sympathy from the general public. She has said, I will do this for my own, I will develop myself. So the question is, how are you helping these people, especially women, with disabilities, to at least empower them economically?
Okay.
Is there a program, a plan? Is there? You've talked about budgeting. Do you have? You've talked about some money there. How are you doing that to help them? Because these are people who actually are left to fend for themselves, and if they don't have anything to empower them economically, I think it becomes even a bigger problem to government.
Anyway, I think maybe to say the truth, by the time I left university, there were so many disabled people on the streets begging. Maybe you can recall. But nowadays, the people you see on the streets begging are non-disabled people. People being brought from Karamoja, from where we have really, for all this time, we have been actually telling disabled people that, our friends, you can use the remaining parts of your body which are well functioning. Like for me, my legs are weak, but my head is good. So I use my head and my hands to survive. You can use your remaining abilities to excel. So I think the disabled people have actually taken up this type of thinking, positive thinking. And indeed, they have tried, to start up something and whatever. And as you see now, with this Amplified Change Funded program of human rights of women and girls with disabilities, you see women under sexual and reproductive health and rights. Women produce children, men leave these children with these disabled women. They play both reproductive and productive roles, and you see them, disabled women, taking their children to school. So for me, I would like to first of all commend disabled people for whatever they are doing to survive and not going to the streets to beg. But what do I say? You ask me a question, what are you doing? Basically, we continue to encourage one another, to sensitize one another. And personally, I have actually encouraged persons with disabilities to use whatever opportunity government takes to their areas of where they live. And like Uganda has come up with this program recently of forming cooperatives and so on. We are also encouraging them to form cooperatives. I have worked with a number of them, and we have formed a circle called Uganda Person with Disabilities Circle, where we want to save and then do this and whatever. And we come together and even share experiences. And that's where I actually would like to call upon all people. Like we are working with the Ministry of Trade. I see our Secretary General, Justin Kasule Lumumba, also doing some work around economic empowerment. We request you, Madam, to come to our rescue, also to include persons with disabilities. You see in the Uganda's wealth creation program. Yes. We have like Ruwero Renzoli, Busoga is coming up. We have like PRDP. And for me as a member of parliament, I really, what I do is to review all those sub-regional programs to be sensitive to disability, so that whatever they do, whatever policies are disability inclusive. Whatever budgets they design is disability inclusive. Because, the country is so big, you cannot say that as an MP, I can be everywhere.
Okay, exactly.
So, but what I encourage my fellow disabled people is again also to keep their ears on the ground so that they can lobby.
Okay, that's very, very interesting there, and also encouraging that you have those initiatives in place. But also now, let's talk about something else that is, of course, we talked about it a little bit, but we didn't really get into the detail as far as it's concerned. And this is the infrastructure that we have in place today. Okay, you find that there is this pregnant lady, and she's a person with disability. Probably she cannot support herself on her 2 feet, and she needs assistance to go to to access a hospital, or maybe accessing any building. Let us not even say someone who is a pregnant lady who needs accessing a hospital. Now, today, you find that most buildings, probably today there are some constructors who put into consideration persons with disabilities. How do they access this building? However, there are some hospitals up to today, ramps are not there. You cannot, get a disabled person, if she or he is moving on his or her own, cannot access that facility. What is your take on that, and what would you advise one government, but also the private sector who are coming up with these buildings? What would you advise them to do as far as helping persons with disabilities access these buildings, especially hospitals?
I think Ugandans are not just law-abiding. because we enacted a law called the Building Control Act. You know, this building, initially when we started advocating for accessibility, you know, Ugandans are not very bad people. They started constructing ramps. But anyway, we realized that the ramps sometimes were not reusable. You know, they were so steep. They were, some of them had very slippery floors, and then, you know, they were not of good use to us. But we enacted a law, the Building Control Act. And what is, actually, for me, what interested me, what I was so happy with this law, we all put our minds together when we were enacting this law. And actually, we provided for specifications. If we are constructing a ramp, it has to be of this specification, the gradient and so on, so that people can use it. But you find people constructing ramps, and then you wonder, even in hospitals, that did they construct it to carry their trolleys, or they constructed it, you know, to help disabled people. So steep. But I would like to encourage Ugandans to read that law. It has those specifications. Even when you are constructing stairs, the specifications are there. But a building like this one, where I am reaching this studio, and you know, I had to sweat going through 3 staircases, really. I would like to request the manager of this UBC company to actually provide for policies, your operational policies, which are disability sensitive, and also to put a budget. When you present this budget under your sector to Parliament, you should tell us, and then we defend it, and then you make that lift working. Otherwise, we don't enjoy. I had to come in because, you know, I wouldn't like to let the program down, but it was not the best.
Yes, yes, and of course that goes to you know, everybody out there who is watching this program here, that whenever you're constructing your buildings, especially hospitals, I'm really looking at hospitals, because this is a place where persons with disabilities will always access. But if they find it difficult accessing them, then it becomes you're just worsening, you know, their life. They're already suffering, but then when they come and, you know, cannot access the hospital, then it becomes a much worse problem. And yes, let's look at as we come to the end of this program, let's look at ladies generally, but also you know, girls, you know, who are having you know, disability, and their reproductive system. One of the things that have actually been talked about is you know, providing sanitary, you know, towels to girls, and it has actually been a problem. Government wanted to do that, but I think it couldn't, because the budget could not you know, provide for that. But some organizations have come in place and, you know, have come to help out. Now, when it comes to a person with disabilities, especially a girl, it becomes a little bit difficult. How are you helping them out in this area?
Okay, we are working with, and let me say, first of all, that it's really hard, because, you know, you find parents with children, and then when it comes to service provision, they say, you know, I have 5 children, but 1 is disabled. Then it means,
it's like you are not counting that one as part of your children.
It means like
already that's discrimination.
That is discrimination. And then if it comes, you know, to giving out services, this girl is going to suffer double. And you know, this is an area actually we want to work with an organization called WASH, dealing with water, sanitation and hygiene. And it's just in our infant stages. But one of our members is actually manufacturing these pads. Okay. Yeah. She's manufacturing these pads, and we are encouraging the girls and women to buy from her.
Okay. I think, and as we come to the end of this show, probably if there is any pertinent you know, issue you'd like to address, or some message you'd like to give to the people watching, especially, you know, government and the private sector, this is the time for you to voice it out.
You know, my father was a businessman, And I know that even if you plan for 5 or 20 years or 100 years, but when you never provide a budget for whatever you plan, you will never implement that. You have said it, that we have in Uganda very good laws, but let us use...
Implementation is a big problem,
Implementation is a problem, and that's the very reason why I innovated the certificate of gender and equity compliance. Let us be good to everybody. Let us plan, provide a budget, and whatever little there is, even if it is in our families, even if it is in the government sectors, let us share all the monies or the budgets equitably.
Thank you so much, Honorable Safia Nalule-Juko, Member of Parliament, representing persons with disabilities and
with human rights.
And also you work with the human rights
of women and girls.
Oh yes, she actually defends PWDs in as far as their rights are concerned. And we've been looking at access to Medicare. Our main focus has actually been on sexual and reproductive health. She's talked a lot in as far as this area is concerned, what Parliament is doing, but also her organization that she works with, what they are doing in as far as persons with disabilities rights are concerned, but also generally what they are doing to help these people also live a comfortable life. And if you're out there and you're still discriminating against a person with disability, then that is not good, because these are very, very important persons. They are very, very productive once they have been helped, and they have also actually, some of them are today employers. They are employing able-bodied people. So it's been a pleasure having you here on UBC TV, and we do hope we shall keep on communicating with you. Maybe probably some other time you'll come and tell us more in as far as economic empowerment of these people is concerned, and also how the story is going on in as far as bettering their lives is concerned. My name is Edward Rukidi Kijana Ngoma, and we shall meet again on Monday next week for another edition of Talk Time. My producer, thank you so much, and also the entire team this evening who have helped us to bring you this show. Thank you so much, and we shall be going down to our news studio to prepare for the news at 10 with Rhoda and Gonzi. Thank you so much for having been part of this show. Good night, and see you next week. Bye.
I'll see.